Former President Trump defending himself outside the courtroom as key witness Michael Cohen testifies about alleged hush money scheme. Now, meanwhile, Trump's allies in Congress cast doubts on Cohen's veracity as a convicted perjurer. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more from outside the courthouse in Manhattan.
As Michael Cohen is testifying about Trump's alleged hush money scheme, Trump is insisting that there's no crime and that his payment to Cohen was indeed a legal expense, just as how it was marked down. Here's Trump after court on Monday. Watch.
He's a corrupt judge and he's a conflicted judge, and he ought to let us go out and campaign and get rid of this scam. Every single legal analyst, even CNN, even MSDNC, they're saying there's no case here.
And Trump's barred, though, from going after Cohen as Trump's under a gag order. But Trump's allies saying this outside the courthouse.
Michael Cohen is the prosecution's star witness. This guy is a convicted felon. Does any reasonable, sensible person believe anything that Michael Cohen says?
And Trump this morning also called for the appellate court to step in, though that looks unlikely. And Trump was also using his court appearance to campaign, touting about a new poll this morning showing him leading President Biden in key battleground states.
Leading in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, and Nevada. I think we're probably leading in New Jersey. We had a rally, over 100,000 people this weekend.
And President Biden's campaign has been attacking Trump over his legal woes, mocking him for being stuck at the courthouse. And Biden spent the last weekend raising campaign funds and telling his donors that Trump is running for revenge. Reporting from New York City, Iris Tao, NTD News.
Today, the prosecution calling Michael Cohen to the stand, a once fiercely loyal attorney to former President Trump, but now a frequent and vocal critic. Cohen is expected to help the prosecution show the jury that Trump falsified business records to cover up a damaged affair. But can he do it? Our legal correspondent Arlene Richards has the latest.
How are you today?
Michael Cohen, once former President Trump's self-described fixer, on the stand Monday to present as the Manhattan District Attorney's most important witness. Cohen was behind the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels in 2016 when he was Trump's personal attorney. Trump reading quotes before entering the courtroom.
The Trump trial is politically motivated. I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump.
Cohen testifying about a so-called catch-and-kill scheme to protect Donald Trump from negative stories ahead of the 2016 presidential election. The former attorney's testimony confirms what previous witnesses have already testified about, including showing the jury Cohen's text messages, hearing his voice in a recorded meeting with Trump, and seeing evidence that Cohen paid Stormy Daniels $130,000 ahead of the 2016 election to keep her quiet. At the beginning of his testimony, Cohen confirmed that Trump reimbursed National Enquirer for a $150,000 payment to former Playboy model Karen McDougal. Cohen created an LLC to make the payment. He testified that Trump's CFO Alan Weisselberg didn't want the Trump name to be connected with the payment. When asked about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels, Cohen said his former boss was more concerned about the campaign than his wife Melania, which Trump has repeatedly denied. Cohen said the Access Hollywood tape was catastrophic to Trump's campaign, but that Trump told him to push the payment out as long as you can past the election. Because if I win, it will have no relevance. I'm already president, and if I lose, I don't really care. Daniels' attorney Keith Davidson had testified that Cohen was anxiously trying to reach Trump before finally deciding to make the payment himself. Cohen said he made the payment because Daniels was going to sell the story to another news outlet. Cohen was on the stand all day. It's still not clear how the details of the $130,000 payment support the charges against Trump of falsifying business records. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
And a Republican Attorney General is launching a probe into Trump's legal battles. Joining me now is Missouri AG Andrew Bailey. Attorney General Andrew Bailey, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
You're calling on demanding the Justice Department to turn over any communications related to the investigation or prosecutions of President Trump, including between the DOJ and the offices of Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, and Fani Willis. So what evidence is there here that links the DOJ to these prosecutors?
Well, first and foremost, everybody can see the illicit nature of the charges themselves. They're not supported by the facts or the evidence, and the cases are falling apart before our very eyes in real time in the courtroom in Manhattan. But the illicit motivations of the prosecutors themselves are now being called into question. And what we see is that the Biden Department of Justice is acting as the headquarters, deploying resources in lawfare against President Trump. Specifically, Matthew Colangelo, who is the number 3 individual official at Biden's Department of Justice, longtime Democrat supporter, has now left the Department of Justice and is leading the prosecution team for Alvin Bragg in Manhattan. And so prosecutors aren't allowed to be self-interested in their cases. Their political motivations should not play a role in deciding what charges to bring and how to prosecute those cases. And yet what we have here is Alvin Bragg, who has sued President Trump when he worked for Letitia James, has campaigned on a promise to prosecute President Trump, has now hired Matthew Colangelo, who is doing the bidding of the Biden administration to help Biden on the campaign trail.
I want to ask now about former Trump attorney Michael Cohen. He's appearing on the stand today in Trump's hush money trial. He's been antagonizing and taunting Trump outside the courtroom, and he's been convicted of lying under oath to Congress. Does this taint his testimony and show his motives for testifying against Trump?
It absolutely does. It demolishes his credibility in front of the jury. You know, I think the court should at least consider striking the testimony altogether. You've got a convicted liar who is politically motivated. I'm not sure why anyone would credit any testimony he would offer in court. If anything, I think the taint of his motivations is hurting the prosecution's case, as it should. But again, we knew going into this that these were politically motivated lawfare promulgated by Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo and ultimately the Biden administration. And the goal here is not to obtain a legally valid conviction. Certainly, the lack of credibility of the witnesses, the fact that the facts and law, the cases aren't supported by the facts and the law, undermine the credibility of the conviction. The goal here has always been to get President Trump off the campaign trail to aid the re-election campaign of Joe Biden. And to that end, Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo are effective. I mean, Missourians are suffering. Missourians who support President Trump are being denied access to a candidate for president of the United States.
Right. Well, last month, the mayor of Kansas City, Missouri, Quinton Lucas, set off a firestorm when he posted on social media that illegal immigrants who wanted to leave New York City shelters could find a job in Kansas City. So you responded with a letter to the mayor saying that illegal immigration is a felony and you threaten to take legal action against anyone who violates this. How did the mayor respond to you, and how is the public overall, how has their reaction been to all of this?
Well, people are outraged that the mayor of Kansas City would try to turn a Missouri city into a sanctuary city when we very clearly have laws on the books to prevent that. Number one, the state can withhold funding from any municipality that attempts to turn into a sanctuary city. But number two, it's illegal for businesses to hire criminal workers. And why wouldn't we want Missouri families to have those jobs instead of criminal aliens? Additionally, it is a felony offense in the state of Missouri to knowingly transport a criminal alien into or through this state. It's designed, that statute's intended and designed to prevent human trafficking. So how dare Quinton Lucas try to undermine the laws of the state of Missouri?
And on illegal immigration, you're one of 20 state attorneys general who are suing Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas over his parole program for migrants entering the country. What's the process of this litigation and the end goal here?
Well, the goal is to prevent Biden from destroying the immigration code. Again, Congress decides who is authorized a visa and who isn't. They design visa programs that are then codified into law. The parole process is for individualized determinations on a case-by-case basis for limited entry for a limited period of time. But what the Biden administration has done is make the parole process a visa program. Again, that undermines the rule of law. It undermines the credibility and authority of Congress, and has created the Biden invasion at the southern border. He's hung an open sign by perverting the law in this manner to allow criminal aliens into this country. And look at what happened in Georgia. Again, a young woman was killed, and her accused murderer was allowed in on this parole process or given a parole after the fact. So there are very real harms nationally, but also in Missouri communities from this perversion of law and the Biden invasion.
Certainly got a lot on your plate there. Attorney General Andrew Bailey, thank you very much for your time here today.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Turning now to the 2024 presidential election, a new poll finds former President Trump leading President Biden in 5 out of 6 major swing states. So what's driving people to rally behind Trump? NTD's Sam Wong has the details.
According to new surveys by the New York Times, Siena College, and the Philadelphia Inquirer, former President Trump is leading President Biden among registered voters in several major battleground states, namely Michigan, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. Biden won all 5 of these states back in 2020. The only battleground state where he's currently ahead is Wisconsin. Meanwhile, third-party candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. scored around 10% in the polls. He drew roughly the same number of voters from both Trump and Biden. The latest survey results suggest a string of factors that seem to be behind Biden's dwindling popularity, including the cost of living, immigration, and his handling of the Israel-Hamas war. Among all issues, the economy stands out as the #1 concern for a quarter of voters. As for former President Trump, the poll shows he wins more than 20% of black voters. This marks a record level of black support for any GOP presidential candidate since the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was signed into law. Outside of party-line topics, most voters appear to be dissatisfied with the current state of the country. Nearly 70% of surveyed participants say America's political and economic system need major overhaul. Some even suggest the systems need to be torn down completely. As Trump's so-called hush money trial continues in Manhattan, the survey suggests it doesn't seem to affect his supporters or his campaign. Sam Wong, NTD News.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.